Hi everyone, and welcome to this special edition of Low Season Traveller Insider Guides. I'm your host, Ged Brown, founder of Low Season Traveller, and this episode is taken from the 11th session of the Keeping the Dream Alive series of webinars, which we're collaborating on with the World Tourism Association for Culture and Heritage and My Travel Research. This episode is entitled The Big Opportunity for Tourism, and I had the honour of presenting my keynote to the audience of over 500 leaders from the global travel industry as I asked the question, just how truthful has our industry been? Have a listen, let us know what you think. This is the keynote from the session. Enjoy.
So, how are you all doing? Quite an unusual circumstance that we've been finding ourselves in recently. How's your lockdown experience been out there? I would imagine that there's been a lot of firsts, and there's been a lot of firsts for me as well. I've been involved in more webinars than I ever imagined I would ever be involved in, and it's been quite fascinating to gain during these webinars, to gain knowledge about the industry, but also to gain a very small insight into the worlds and the houses and the homes of people that we're speaking to, and we usually don't get that level of sort of individuality. You know, we don't usually get to see into people's homes, so it's been quite strange. And I guess, like many of you, you might have found it quite interesting just to see what people's home office setups look like. And I found it absolutely fascinating. I've been in awe, frankly, of a lot of people's home office setups. We've seen old oak bookcases in the background, trophy cabinets. Some people are doing it from their sunroom. And yeah, I've been quite in awe by how professionally set up a lot of you are out there. Especially given that my home office is it's my youngest daughter's bedroom, and it's a little different. This is my home office. I've basically spent my lockdown 12 hours a day approximately in a land of kittens, fairies, unicorns, and rainbows, quite frankly. And it's been kind of surreal. So if you can just see in the corner on the right hand side, that you'll see my monitor, and that's where I'm set up. So yeah, I'm surrounded by a childlike innocence, the hopes and dreams of the next generation, and actually, it's quite inspiring, actually, because you do sort of see things through a different light when you're sat here, and it feels different to being in a corporate office. So you're jealous now of my home office, I'm sure. So there you go. The reason that I'm telling you that is, I could have created a virtual background and you'd be none the wiser. Or I could have just had my plain green wall and not shown you what it really looks like. But I wanted to be brutally honest with you, and unashamedly so. I'm not embarrassed about this. And as a result of that, you're probably more likely to trust me because you can see I'm very clearly being very honest with you. And we've heard a few of our speakers talking about the importance of trust as we move forward as an industry. So we absolutely understand that we need to start being more truthful, generally speaking, really. And in our industry, we've had a penchant really for telling white lies for quite some time, if we're being honest. And I'd like you to focus in your minds the importance of truth and trust as we continue on this talk today. So how are you feeling about the recovery? It's interesting, isn't it? We're starting to get nearer to the supposed recovery, and we might be feeling nervous, excited. Maybe you're more than ready to travel again yourselves as well, as we start to enter the recovery phase of what we're going through. But for me, I'm not convinced that the word recovery is the right word. I don't know what the right word is, but recovery, when we look at the definition of recovery, it feels wrong. A return to the normal state of mind and strength. And Carolyn talked about the new normal, which we'll be going into. Do we want to return to the normal that we were at before? I suppose, we use recovery because if we wanted to change it to something which, I'd like to see, which is, a radically different and changed tourism offering, which balances more evenly the needs of travelers, communities, and the environment. Well, it's just easier to say recovery, and you can't fit what I said into a hashtag, and probably wouldn't fit on Twitter either. But recovery does seem to intimate a return to the previous state of affairs, and I'm not convinced that that's a noble or just aim, if I'm honest. So what was normal before COVID-19? Well, this was normal. This was how we inspired people to travel. It was through imagery like this. This is the stuff that we showed people to inspire them to travel and experience the world. And you find these images, I got these images from major travel websites, blogs, posters, and other travel media meant to inspire us. This one is Maya Bay in Thailand. I'm sure you've seen this image 100 times before whenever they're promoting Thailand. It's just a glorious image, wonderful colors. This one is Levant Beach in Salou in northern Spain. It's a glorious stretch of golden beach. And, I've got to point out that these photos weren't taken during the COVID-19 lockdown. These were taken at other times of the year before coronavirus ever hit. So what you see here, they haven't been photoshopped either. This is what these photographs look like. That's just a wonderful beach. And this, of course, is the Ponte della Paglia in Italy, which again is an absolutely beautiful destination. So that's what we sold you on. That's what we got your juices flowing and made you want to travel and experience these destinations for yourselves. And this is what you got when you paid your money and you went out there. This is the view from the Acropolis in Athens. A little bit different to the photo that we showed you before, but I'm sure each one of these individuals is having a fantastic time, really relaxing on their holiday and exploring the cultural wonders of Athens. This is Maya Bay in Koh Phi Phi in Thailand. Had to close down just over a year ago due to too much tourism, and it was destroying the natural habitats around that whole area. But that's what it looks like most of the time. And you need to understand that, for most of these people, this is the Levant Beach in Spain during the summer season. Did each one of these individuals, is that what they signed up to? When they saw the photographs that were selling them Levant Beach in Spain, is that what they signed up to? And this is the experience for 80%, according to the seasonality curves. This is the experience for 80% of the people that travel to Salou. Are we being truthful? I'm not sure. This is the Ponte della Paglia in Venice. Slightly different photo. This one. Don't often see this one in the tourism promotional pieces for some reason. And also, I noticed when I was going through these photographs, we absolutely shudder when you look at these in the light of the current social distancing rules and regulations that we're looking at. It looks just absolutely absurd. It's amazing how quickly things change, isn't it? So, serious question for you all. What were those last few images? Why would they not be used in each destination's promotional materials? Serious question. Why aren't those images used? Those are the experiences that approximately between 70 and 80% of all visitors to those destinations, that's the experience they're getting. Why would we not show people those images? And what are the implications for the answer that you've just said to your screen or to your colleagues? Have we been truthful? Can consumers trust us? And frankly, why would they trust us? So let's have a look at what we want to recover too. The good old days. So this is from the UN WTO Tourism Monitor, which comes out every year. Great publication, free of charge to download. We can see here that this was from 2018. We were up to 1.4 billion international tourist arrivals, which was up 5% on the previous year. 1.7 trillion US dollars, a huge amount of money coming in, up 4% on the previous year. And we can see that we'd experienced our 9th consecutive year in arrivals growth. So all going really well. There were more tourists than ever before in 2018, and I'm sure 2019 will bear out to be exactly the same when those figures come out. Every region in the world saw more visitors, and the WTO and others were quoted as saying, and it was on LinkedIn, that it had been the best ever year for tourism. And it does make you wonder. It depends on how you're measuring what the best year for tourism is. If it's just arrivals, then yeah, absolutely. So we've seen consistent growth where even the global financial crisis, when at the time, it was like the end of the world. It was horrendous for not just for travel and tourism, but for every industry. But when we look back on the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009, it was just a slight blip, and we recovered really very quickly along the same path that we were going on, this relentless march forwards. And what we were marching forwards to, well, the UNWTO, for those of you that aren't familiar with this, they did some studies which were created to predict really where tourism was going in terms of tourism arrivals by 2030. And the study showed that by 2030, we'd be on 1.8 billion international tourist arrivals. It also showed that we'd be on 1.4 billion international tourist arrivals by 2020. And as we've just said, we hit that figure in 2018. So, we're 200 million ahead of where we were predicted to be. So that's probably brought some quite unique challenges for us. But I would imagine that by 2030, again, assuming there is a recovery from coronavirus, we'd be over 2 billion. So then coronavirus came along. Obviously, this is the knitted version of the knitted strain of coronavirus. Can't remember where I got the photo from. I've seen it represented so many times. I'm not sure the colors are accurate. I don't know what color coronavirus is. I've seen it green, I've seen it blue. But anyway, I like the knitted version, frankly. So coronavirus came along, and this is some of the stuff that we lost. So this is always shown by the World Travel and Tourism Council and the United Nations World Tourism Organization as the benefits of travel and tourism to the world. Some great stuff here: jobs, economic growth, 7% of the world's exports, 10% of the world's GDP. I guess a lot of you out there have seen this a million times, frankly. But this is all the stuff that we lost as a result of the coronavirus, because we went from over tourism and everything going well to literally a drop off the edge of the cliff. But this is some of the stuff that we gained. We went from over tourism to zero tourism overnight. So this is the stuff that we gained. So this is the opposite of recovery. This was the degradation of the tourism industry. You can see the bottoms now of the canals in Venice. The lions are taking a nap on the roads now, which were previously busy pre-coronavirus, and you can actually see the Himalayas from northern India now. So I guess when you can no longer see the mighty Himalayas from northern India due to a polluted haze, then you'll know that recovery is well on the way for travel and tourism. So good stuff. So we also lost this. Over tourism, very familiar, I think, to anybody that's been following the industry. We've seen over tourism in pretty much every region of the world. And this is also what we lost as a result of coronavirus. Like I keep saying, we went from over tourism to zero tourism in a heartbeat. And when we talk about over tourism, I can't stand it. I always try to say so-called over tourism, because what is it over? If I'm overweight, which actually I am, if you're asking, slightly. The reason I know that I'm overweight is because doctors and medical practitioners and experts have determined that for somebody of my lifestyle, my age, my height, they've prescribed a certain range which would be the ideal and optimum weight for me. So when we talk about over tourism, over what? What's the point of reference for this? And that's a really, really big question that as an industry, we have not got an answer for. It's, I suppose, linked a little bit to the Goldilocks paradox from the story of Goldilocks and the three bears, where they have the porridge and one's too hot, one's too cold, and one is just right. It's just the right amount of everything. So we know what too many is because it's over tourism. We now know what too few is because it dropped off the edge of a cliff due to coronavirus. So what does just right look like? How many tourists is just right? Not per year, but at any given time. At any particular day in a destination, what's the optimum number of tourists? And it's an intriguing question, and it's one that I've asked when we used to go to events. I used to go to all of these travel events, World Travel Market, ITB, IMEX, all of these, and I would speak to ministers for tourism, CEOs of tourism authorities, and I would ask them what I thought was quite a reasonable question, which is, what's the capacity of your destination? What's the most amount of tourists that you can have at any one given time, and indeed then also for an average year. And they would talk to me about the number of bed nights which they have in their destination, and they would talk to me about Airbnb nights. But what about the road capacity? What about the taxis, the public transport, the infrastructure? How many people can that take? So we need to get a better handle on the distribution of our tourism to avoid these pressure points. We need to understand what is the right amount of tourism. So this is a seasonality curve. It's for a European destination, actually. I've obviously made it a lot more basic. We're not talking about 5 tourists, but along the y-axis there is obviously the number of tourists arrivals, and across the bottom is the months of the year. And this is pretty typical. Usually it's a bell-shaped curve, and we need to understand what our seasonality curve looks like, and really where the optimum level is on that. So you have to look at where the pain points are. So on this particular one, it would look like you've got some major pressure points at July and August, for example. On the months that I've highlighted there is when 75% of arrivals take place. Actually, it's over a 6-month period, and that's for Turkey. And by the way, that peak there where it's 5, by the way, that might be fine. That's no concern. It depends on what number of tourism arrivals you can take in your destination. So this curve, if your curve looks this shape for a seasonality of your destination, it's not necessarily scary. It's only scary if you've estimated that the peak, I don't know if you can see my cursor, I'm waving it over the 3 there. If that's where really the peak is, for it to be comfortable, for it to be a good experience for the tourists and for the local community, if it's there, then you've got problems in the peak months. If it's right up beyond 6 in 7, then obviously you've got no issue. This is another seasonality curve. So this was based on the same numbers as that previous one, and it's just a little bit of a flatter version of it. Same number of visitor arrivals, but obviously on the last one we got up to 5 and 6 on the y-axis. This time you get up to sort of 2.5, more evenly distributed. And again, this isn't necessarily a good thing. It depends on what the number of tourists is that you can welcome into your destination. If the optimum number of tourists is 1.5 million, then you've got big problems. So this seasonality curve, this could be Venice, it could be Las Vegas, which they've got a huge amounts of tourism. It could equally be Myanmar, where they've got it pretty flat, but actually they've still got a lot of room for growth. So yeah, generally speaking, we're talking about flattening the seasonality curve. And when we talk about flattening the seasonality curve, there's different ways in which we can do this. We can increase prices, mainly during the peak seasons, traditional peak seasons, to deter some visitors. We can develop more destinations and resorts, and that's been touted a lot. They call it tourism dispersal. We need to move people from Venice to Trieste, and I've got a problem with that. Because for me, if you're moving the tourism arrivals to another destination down the road to develop that destination, presumably you're going to build new hotels, which will be occupied for 6 months of the year and running at 20% occupancy for the remaining 6 months of the year. That hardly feels sustainable to me. Surely the first choice should be, fill the times of the year that you've got currently. So encourage and promote tourism during the quieter weeks and months of the year. And I've got to ask, why do we not do this? I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is what used to be on the maps in the old days, ye old days, I should say. Here be dragons. They used to have this on maps when they didn't really know what was out there, but they knew it was, it was scary stuff. It was the great unknown. And that's the same with our low seasons. I think we sort of feel that it's the great unknown and it's filled with fear. And actually, for the same reasons that, Marco Polo, Christopher Columbus, and all of the rest wanted to explore these regions of the world where there were dragons, it's filled with adventure. There's something different. There's something exciting about it as well. But be under no illusion. We as an industry are responsible for the seasonality issue. We absolutely are at fault here. As travel agents and tour operators, we were solicited for advice, and we informed people when was the best time to visit each destination. And I used to do it myself. People used to come into me when I was a travel agent and ask, when's the best time to go to, I don't know, Koh Samui, or when's the best time to go to Sydney or Manchester or Cork in Ireland? And we come up with all of these kind of graphics which show this is a good one. I'm not picking out on these ones. The intention's right. It's when's the best time to visit every region in the world, but best according to what parameters? What's the tourist looking for? If it's just about weather, then okay, we can sort of do something on that. But maybe if they're looking for something more than weather. I've traveled the world over during the low seasons, mainly because I used to go on fam trips and educationals. And the fam trips and educationals in the industry were always done during the low seasons because, they had spare hotel rooms, the flights were cheaper and everything else. And I was always amazed at what a wonderful experience it was in each of these destinations. And I couldn't believe that why anybody else wasn't traveling at those times of the year. So what I do see is I see a lack of confidence that our low season product is strong enough. And it's almost as if we don't see the value in our destinations during different times of the year. We don't see it ourselves, and it's our home. That I find bizarre, quite frankly. So, for those seeking something authentic, something different, something adventurous, if you're seeking excitement, culture, heritage, weather is not the crucial factor. As Serrano Fine says, there's no such thing as bad weather, only inappropriate clothing. And many are craving all of these things. We need to target them more accurately. So what's the difference between a city in the summer and the same city in the winter? Different seasons. I did up this example, gosh, must have been just half a year ago. I created an example, and I did it on Expedia or one of those kind of guys, of a Thursday to Sunday break in Rome, actually, just randomly. Flights with Ryanair, including seat allocation, same flight times out and back, same hotel, 5-star hotel, the NH Romana Palazzo, which is a lovely hotel. Transfers to and from Rome Airport, 2-day hop-on, hop-off premium bus tour, as you do, to get a bit of an overview. And you can see clearly the difference in price, apart from anything else. But one was in December and one was in July. Here's the difference in the experience. In the summer, in the July one, there'll be queues of up to 3 hours for attractions like seeing the Colosseum, for example. Regularly, there'll be queues for 3 hours to get to see the Colosseum. In winter, there are pretty much no queues. In summer, it's twice the price. It's half the price in the winter, as we just saw. The service levels in the summer during the peak seasons in Rome likely to be poorer due to the crowds. Studies have shown that levels of service in hotels decrease the closer they get to full occupancy for, I guess, pretty obvious reasons. In the winter, there's more of a chance for local interaction. There's less tourists around, so there's a greater chance that locals will have time for you, and actually you're going to be more welcomed there because they need more tourism during the low periods to pay the bills. And of course, for both of those, in the summer and the winter, all of the sites are still there. The Colosseum's not going anywhere. St. Peter's Square's not going anywhere. It's all still there. The only other difference really is in winter you need to bring a jacket. Well, what was the purpose of your trip to Rome anyway? Was it just about the weather, or was it to see the cultural and historical beauty of the destination? Bringing a jacket, well, that's no hardship. So, if you had a business which had a 70% reliance on one product or income stream, I believe it would be patently folly if you didn't monitor and manage it incredibly carefully, and B, if you didn't make serious efforts to reduce the overall reliance on that single product line. This is why so many European destinations are frantically trying to reopen their resorts right now, even though it's quite likely in many cases that it's unsafe to do so. The single biggest product line is catering to peak season clients. In this case, the summer is their probably, if it's not their only opportunity for tourism revenue, it's certainly their most significant one. So what happens when something comes along and decimates that cash cow? And what if it's not just a blip, but a crisis, and actually a rather large crisis, like we've seen with coronavirus? I was going to show you a video here of Blackadder, but we tried it before and the sound didn't work, so I'll skip over that. But it's basically Blackadder talking about just how large a crisis we're going through, particularly right now when we look at coronavirus. But we are at the dawn of a new day. As David Bierman pointed out in our first episode, crisis is just another word for opportunity. We are starting again from the very bottom. It's a new beginning, and the time to flatten our seasonality curve has never been better and more needed than ever before. Now is indeed the time. These are some of the travel trends which have been identified by ABTA here in the UK, Forbes, CN Traveller, and Wanderlust, and many others. We're all craving real experiences more and more. You hear this word. Chris always says he's sick of hearing about it, authenticity, and it's right. Everyone's looking for something which is more authentic, more real. We're looking for stuff that's sustainable, responsible. We recognize that we as individuals have a role to play in the future of our planet, and we want that to be taken into consideration when we travel as well. We're also going to want to travel without the crowds more and more. We're looking at what's going on with coronavirus, and we're not going to be wanting to be shoulder to shoulder with other people all of the time, at least not for the foreseeable future. We're going to want to travel a little bit more without the crowd. So while people are in that frame of mind, we've got a huge opportunity right now to, for the first time ever, really start to promote and encourage travels during those low seasons. So a lot of you are thinking, look, I'm a small business owner. I'm not Expedia. I'm not National Geographic. What can I do? And this quote, I won't read it out, but it's a quote that I really like. It's by a lady called Marianne Williamson. It's often attributed to Nelson Mandela, bizarrely, but it's not by Nelson Mandela. And it just basically says how you're playing small doesn't serve the world in the slightest. And actually, we all need to recognize the power that we have. And as we recognize the power that's within each of us, and we let our light shine, we unconsciously give permission to others to do exactly the same. And I really like that quote. So I believe that small independent businesses like you guys out there, like me, like a lot of us, will be the saviors of our industry. People are more conducive than ever before to purchase from small or smaller independent businesses. And part of that is because we're having a massive increase in the mistrust of large business. The large guys are letting us down increasingly. We've seen planned obsolescence with companies like Apple. Oh, hello. Sorry about that. Somebody on the line. We're seeing planned obsolescence with companies like Apple, Volkswagen rigging environmental tests, and increasingly we're mistrustful of these big guys. And I think that we're recognizing that these giant corporations aren't to be trusted, and that's because they put shareholder profits above and beyond absolutely everything. It goes above morals and everything else, and we're starting to recognize that, and we're starting to see that now the world over. So I wanted to highlight that organizations that don't have huge private equity backing and don't necessarily serve their shareholders first at all costs, and these are three people actually, I should say, who I have got the utmost respect for in our industry. You've got Jonathan Worsley here at Bench Events, who run huge hospitality events, and they created something called Bench Impact, which is about giving back to local communities. Wonderful business, looks after his people first and foremost, looks after his customers and his clients, and doesn't put profit above absolutely everything else. Ray Bloom, very much the same in IMEX, if any of you are familiar with that global exhibition. They run it twice a year, or they used to, in Las Vegas and Frankfurt. And the first time I went to IMEX, Ray Bloom on the last day, and by the way, thousands, if you aren't familiar with it, thousands of people go to these events. And Ray Bloom was stood at the exit, and he was shaking the hand of everybody as they went out. Thousands there. He's not a young guy either. Actually, physically, it must have been quite draining. But he wanted to thank everybody personally for taking the time to come. If IMEX was owned by a big global shareholder-led company, there is no way the person responsible for that event would take that level of care and consideration for their clients and for doing the right thing. The chap on the end there is John Howell, a former colleague of mine, a former boss of mine, former mentor of mine, and he set up Aviadev. Again, a small company, but what Aviadev do is they, again, look to serve the communities first and foremost. John is the CEO, and he does marathons in gorilla outfits. He takes, that's for the Gorilla Foundation, I should point out, not just for fun. But he takes a huge amount of pride in doing good. And these people, these independent businesses, they have a genuine and authentic passion for their subject, and they deeply care. They care about doing the right thing morally and ethically. And I would suggest that's what we can all do. That's how we can be different. We can support these kind of organizations, because these are the kind of organizations that are going to see us out of this. I think we know now that the big guys aren't going to be the ones to do it. And also, what else can we do? Well, in a world where everyone wants to be in the spotlight, spotlights are the most popular commodity. So I would encourage you all to be the spotlight, and just see how popular you can become when you're willing and ready to shine the light on other people. See how you become more respected and listened to. And also, see how you gain a huge amount of knowledge by being a spotlight, by having a podcast, by having a webinar, by having a blog. Be an influencer and shine the light on other people who are doing great stuff. And in that vein, I'd like to shine the light on these two, actually. Please check out both of these. You've got Muhammed Cherkov. This guy runs a tourism live talk show on Instagram, which he's had me on as a guest for. It's a wonderful show, and Chris has been on the show as well. And when I was first asking Chris about his experience on the show, I said, I'm doing the tourism live talk. Chris said, yeah, it's 2 hours long. I was like, what? It's 2 hours long. Muhammad runs these talks, and they take a long time, but you know what? You can get more. You can talk about more in the industry and on a more of a granular level in 2 hours than you ever could if you were part of a panel for half an hour and you're one of four. In 2 hours, you can really get under the skin. And I absolutely applaud and commend Muhammed Cherkov for setting this up and for sticking to 1 hour and a half, 2 hours, because in that amount of time, you can actually get more to the heart of each particular topic in more depth, and I think that's what we need more of, frankly. So please do check him out. He's on Instagram, he's on Facebook, he's on LinkedIn, and he's doing some great work. Has some great guests as well. I've learned so much. The other guys, new to me quite recently. So this is Greg Gug Girard and Colin Girard, his brother. And their Canada show, which is just utterly wonderful. I've watched a couple of episodes now. First and foremost, you're never going to see such passion for somebody's destination as with these guys and Canada. They live and breathe Canada. I feel if you cut them in half, there's probably a maple leaf in the middle of them somewhere. It's just utterly infectious. And, for me, who's traveled to Canada many times on business, but never really experienced Canada, if I'm being very honest, boy, do I want to go to Canada and experience more of that destination myself. So please, check those guys out as well. And also, reach out to all of our speakers. they can help you navigate through a lot of this if you're looking to really try and do more in the industry and flatten your seasonality curve. These are some of the brightest minds that I've ever had the privilege of meeting myself. I've actually been quite intimidated by a lot of them, if I'm being very honest with you all. These guys are thoroughly knowledgeable. They're absolute experts in their respective fields. They're all independent. They're all deeply passionate about doing good in our industry, and they're all collaborators. There isn't one person on here that wouldn't absolutely welcome if you reached out to them and connected with them. So please do use the opportunity. So in summary, look, we can't and mustn't go back down the path that we were on. We know exactly where it leads us, and it's not all fairies and princesses. We've got the golden opportunity right now to proactively promote our low seasons and thus create a more sustainable year-round offering. We just need to have the courage to target the growing number of travelers who fit the low season travel profile. And finally, this is a picture which always reminds me of one of my favorite poems, actually, which is a poem by Robert Frost, which you may know. It's called The Road Not Taken. And I'm urging all of us to go down the path that's less traveled by. The quote from it is, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and we should take the one less traveled by, and that will make all the difference."
So there you have it. Thanks again for your company this week, and if you haven't already done so, please do have a listen to the Q&A from this session in the next episode, which is also out now. That's all for now. Enjoy your day, stay safe, stay healthy, stay home, and please don't forget to share our content with your friends and industry colleagues who may also believe that now, more than ever, travel is better without the crowds.